The manila folder on the kitchen table contains a photograph of your own bedroom, taken from the doorway while you were asleep, and your landlord is currently asking if you prefer the blue silk or the black lace for the evening's negotiations. Mr. Henderson's thumb is tracing the serrated edge of an unpaid rent notice, the paper white and sharp enough to draw blood. He doesn't look up. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply pushes a glass of water toward the center of the table. The condensation leaves a perfect, clear ring on the wood, a wet 0 marking the exact value of your remaining options. The radiator is hissing, a thin metallic scream that fills the silence of the kitchen, but the air in the room is dead. There is a single deep scratch on the mahogany grain of his signet ring, a jagged mark that looks like a tally. You will see that mark again, much later, in a place you never thought he could reach. For now, you sit. The chair legs shriek against the linoleum. He reaches out and places his hand over yours. His skin is cold. The pressure is steady. He says the debt is a weight neither of us needs to carry. And then he opens the folder to show you the dress he has already purchased for the girl he's decided you're going to be. The fabric is a midnight blue silk that feels like liquid lead. It has no tags. It has no brand. It only smells of cedar and the kind of high-end dry cleaning that costs more than your weekly grocery budget. The zipper is a thin silver line that disappears into the seam like a surgical scar. When you put it on, the weight of the material pulls at your shoulders, anchoring you to the floor of the hallway. Mr. Henderson is standing behind you. His reflection in the warped glass of the coat closet mirror is just a shadow with a pale face. He does not touch your skin. He only touches the metal tab of the zipper. The sound of the teeth locking together is a sharp singular click that echoes in the narrow space. He adjusts the collar, his fingers brushing the hair away from the nape of your neck with the clinical precision of a coroner. He tells you the guests arrive at 8. He tells you your only job is to ensure no glass remains empty for more than 60 seconds. He hands you a silver tray. It is heavy. The edges are ornate and sharp enough to dent the skin of your thumb if you grip it too hard. The human brain is a master of forensic self-deception. We are currently witnessing a boiled frog escalation. In clinical terms, the subject, the narrator, is experiencing a cognitive bypass where the survival instinct, securing shelter, overrides the social moral compass. When the landlord offers to restructure the debt, the brain processes this not as a threat, but as a biological relief. The cortisol levels drop because the immediate danger of homelessness is removed, even as the secondary, more complex danger of exploitation is introduced. It isn't a surrender. It is a neurological trade. You don't burn the bridge you're standing on when the water is rising, even if the man who built the bridge is the one holding the match. The foyer of the townhouse smells of beeswax and cold lilies. The first guest is a man with a gray beard and eyes that do not blink. He doesn't look at your face when you hand him a crystal flute of champagne. He looks at the rhythmic pulse in your wrist. The anchor of the evening is the sound of the ice bucket, the clink of the silver tongs against the cubes. Clink, clink, clink. You focus on that sound. It is the only thing that feels real in a room full of hushed, predatory conversations. Mr. Henderson is moving through the crowd like a conductor. His hand occasionally rests on the small of your back to guide you toward a guest who looks thirsty. His touch is always brief. It is always professional. It is always exactly where the silk is thickest, ensuring he never actually touches your skin while simultaneously reminding you that he owns the fabric covering it. By 10 o'clock, the drawing room is a heat trap of 20 bodies. The hostess label is a failing shield. You are a worker. You are staff. But the guests are not treating you like staff. They are watching you with a quiet, collective intensity that feels like a physical weight. A man named Marcus reaches for a drink and lets his fingers linger on the tray. He doesn't take the glass. He holds the rim, forcing you to maintain the weight of the silver. The tray begins to shake. It is a microscopic tremor, but the crystal flutes are chattering against each other. Marcus is smiling. It is a slow, predatory spread of teeth. He asks Henderson if you are part of the new acquisition. Henderson doesn't laugh. He just tightens his grip on his own drink and says, "You are singularly dedicated to the role. Look at the room through my eyes for a second. Look at the way the light hits the silver. You think you'd see the exit sign and run. You think you'd drop the tray and scream. But imagine the cold air outside. Imagine the sound of your suitcase rolling down a dark sidewalk with nowhere to go. Now look back at the room. It's warm here. It smells like expensive perfume. The man holding your tray isn't hitting you. He's just looking at you. Is a look worth a roof? Is a touch on the silk worth a bed?" You start to do the math. You start to justify the wait. You tell yourself that as long as they don't touch your skin, you're still winning. You're not a victim. You're an entrepreneur. You're liquidating your discomfort to pay off a high-interest loan. It's just a business move. Isn't that what we all do? The clink of the ice tongs is growing sharper. It is the only constant in the room. Clink, clink, clink. There is a small, jagged chip in the rim of the ice bucket. A V-shaped nick that looks like a bird in flight. You stare at it until your vision blurs. Henderson calls you into the library. The room is lined with leather-bound books that smell of old paper and peppermint. The air is cooler here. There are 3 men sitting in high-backed chairs. They are not drinking champagne anymore. They are drinking something dark and amber that leaves oily, slow-moving streaks on the glass. Henderson tells you to set the tray down. He doesn't use your name. He uses a word that makes the blood turn to slush in your veins. Collateral. He says it with a clinical softness, as if he is discussing a line item in a ledger. He asks you to stand by the window where the moonlight will catch the blue of the silk. He isn't looking at you as a person. He is presenting you as a proof of concept. One of the men pulls out a fountain pen and lays it on the desk. The scratch of the nib against the paper is the only sound in the library. We are now entering the choice point. The narrator is observing the physical world with hyper-fixated detail. The smell of the peppermint is overpowering. The texture of the leather chairs is visible in the dim light, worn, cracked, and dark. The moonlight through the window is a cold, blue blade that cuts across the floor. This is the sensory overload of a trapped animal. The exit is 20 feet away. The front door is unlocked, but the psychological barrier is reinforced by the weight of the midnight blue silk. To leave the room, she has to acknowledge she is a person. To stay in the room, she only has to be an object. The brain chooses the path of least resistance. She stays. Marcus stands up and walks toward the window. He doesn't stop until he is inches away. You can smell the peat and the salt on his breath. He reaches out and touches the chip in the ice bucket that you left on the side table. Then he touches the signet ring on his own finger. The scratch on his ring matches the chip in the bucket perfectly. He has been here before. He has done this before. He asks Henderson if the terms of use are flexible. Henderson leans back in his chair. His face is half hidden in the shadows. He doesn't say yes. He doesn't say no. He just picks up the silver tongs and drops a single cube of ice into his glass. Clink. The sound is a gavel hitting a block. The realization isn't a scream. It is a quiet, cold settling of the bones. The guest list wasn't a list of friends. It was a list of bidders. The parties weren't celebrations. They were inspections. You look at the midnight blue silk and realize it isn't a gift. It is a uniform for a job you didn't realize you had already accepted the moment you let him zip you into it. Every drink you serve is a ledger entry. Every smile you force is a payment on the interest. The debt isn't being paid off. It is being refinanced. The landlord stands up and walks to the door. He pauses, his hand on the brass knob. He looks back at you, and for the first time tonight, he smiles. It is a fatherly smile, full of a terrifying kind of ownership. He tells Marcus to be careful with the crystal. Then he walks out and closes the door. The click of the latch is final. It is the same sound as the zipper. A locking mechanism. A completed circuit. You stand by the window and watch the moon. The ice in the bucket begins to melt. The cubes shifting and settling with a soft, wet sound. The anchor is gone. The kind landlord has dissolved, leaving behind the hard, jagged reality of the creditor. Marcus moves closer. He reaches for the silver tongs. He doesn't use them for ice. He runs the cold metal down the back of your arm, leaving a trail of goosebumps in its wake. He asks if you know why the silk is so heavy. He says it's so you can't run as fast as the others did. The night doesn't end with a rescue. It ends with the scratch of a fountain pen and the smell of peppermint. It ends with the realization that you aren't the hostess. You are the venue. And the rent is due every hour, on the hour, for as long as he decides to keep the lights on. You look at Marcus, your voice clinical and dry, and you ask him if he would like another drink. You don't wait for an answer. You know the role. You know the script. You know the price of the roof over your head. Now, I want you to be honest in the comments. Some of you are sitting there thinking she's a victim who was coerced by a predator. Others are looking at the facts and seeing a woman who traded her body for an apartment because she didn't want to work a real job. Is she a captive? Or is she just a high-end tenant who finally found a way to make the math work? If you were 1 month away from the street, would you put on the dress or would you sleep on the concrete? Choose a side. There is no middle ground in this house.